Productivity is driven by outcomes, not just physical presence.
They say productivity is driven by outcomes, not just physical presence, which sounds progressive. Until you ask one small question: whose outcomes? Because if outcomes matter more than presence, why are promotions still given to the most visible? Why are acting appointments tied to who stays late? Why do meetings magically happen outside Flexi hours? Why does availability keep showing up in performance reviews, even though it's not an outcome? Turns out, outcomes matter, as long as they come with presence. Because in practice, productivity isn't measured by results. It's measured by sacrifice. How late you stayed, how reachable you were, how much free labor you donated. So when they say productivity isn't about physical presence, what they really mean is, presence just changed shape. You don't have to be at your desk. You just have to be available everywhere, all the time.
We have prepared a model that shows that what the staggered working hours will look like from 6:30 to 3 p.m., for example, 7:30 to 4 p.m., 8:30 to 5 p.m., 9:30 to 6 p.m., 10:30 to 7 p.m., and so on.
To be fair, the times were given. Very clear times. 6:30 to 3, 7:30 to 4, 8:30 to 5, 9:30 to 6, 10:30 to 7. On paper, that looks like choice. That looks bold. That looks modern. Now let's talk about practice. Because in practice, only some of those times will be encouraged. Some will be discouraged. And some will quietly come with consequences. Early start? Hope you don't miss meetings. Late start? Hope you're not trying to lead anything. Leaving at 3? Hope no deadlines magically appear at 3:15. Leaving at 7? Hope you enjoy unsafe commutes and burnout. Nobody will say no. They won't have to, because the system will nudge you, reward certain hours, ignore others. And over time, people will choose the same few slow.
For all the leaders in the various organizations to implement it, to make their staff be aware of the provisions and to give staff the opportunity to utilize the flexible work program. As I said earlier, there may be some circumstances and some services that some organizations will not be able to fully utilize it, some category of staff. But as far as possible, it should be made available to the staff who will want to utilize it. And if it's not done, clearly I'd want to hear about that. I am actually very enthused to get on to the other areas of the work program: hybrid work, telecommuting, compressed work week, and banking of hours. But I'm being managed to make sure we do it carefully, and I'm fully in favor of that. So to make sure when we do this, there's no disruption, but in everything that we do, there'll be increased productivity.
So people keep saying, relax. Workers can just ask for Flexi. And yes, they can. In the same way, you can technically tell your boss you don't like unpaid overtime. Let's start with senior staff, near pension age. Flexi for them isn't flexibility. It's a countdown clock. The minute you ask, you're no longer experienced. You're winding down. Union active workers? Flexi just gives management a new font for the word difficult. This isn't about conspiracy theories or secret plans. What's being discussed here is something quieter and more important. Structure. When policies are introduced, they don't just change what happens today. They shape what becomes possible tomorrow. And that's what matters here. The presentation introduces a set of structural changes. First, it separates work from physical location. Work is no longer defined by presence in a specific place, but by deliverables. This doesn't mean jobs will automatically move elsewhere, but it does mean that location becomes less important in future decision-making. Once that line is crossed, it can't easily be reversed. Second, evaluation shifts from time to outcomes. Productivity is framed around results rather than hours worked. The issue is not the idea itself. The issue is that outcomes are not clearly defined or limited. When expectations are undefined, they tend to expand. And expanded expectations usually fall most heavily on workers. Third, flexibility is based on discretion rather than guarantees. Access to flexible arrangements depends on managerial approval. This creates uneven application. Two people in similar roles can be treated differently, with no clear standard or appeal. Discretion introduces power imbalance. Fourth, safeguards are deferred. Worker protections are described as something that will be addressed later in future phases. At the same time, enforcement structures and oversight bodies are clearly identified. This creates an imbalance. Authority is concrete, protections are abstract. None of this requires bad intent. No one needs to plan harm for risk to exist. This is how systems behave when efficiency is prioritized without equal attention to safeguards. Systems follow the paths that are open for them. Over time, if unchecked, this structure can drift toward greater cost optimization, more reliance on metrics, uneven access to flexibility, and increased pressure on workers. This is not about assuming the worst. It's about recognizing path dependency. Once these choices are made, future decisions are shaped by them. A clear way to understand this is simple. The policy is not inherently exploitative, but it removes existing structural protections without replacing them with equally strong safeguards. That creates risk. The key question to ask going forward is this: what concrete mechanisms exist to prevent misuse? Clear definitions, enforceable rights, transparency, and accountability are what determine whether flexibility benefits workers or becomes pressure. What we're seeing is not a plan. It's the foundation. And what gets built on it depends on what safeguards are added next.
Flexibility must never mean insecurity. Flexible work arrangement must enhance work, not erode rights. They must not be used to weaken terms and conditions of employment, bypass collective bargaining, or impose unilateral changes without consultation. We support innovation, but we insist on fairness. We welcome flexibility, but we defend security.